You're doing everything right. You read the books. You bought the monitor. You're running on 3 hours of sleep because you love this tiny person more than you knew was possible. And your baby is still screaming. Here's what nobody tells you. Some of the things you're doing to help your baby feel safe, the things that feel completely natural and loving. Your baby's nervous system is reading as a threat signal, not because you're doing anything wrong, because infant neuroscience is genuinely counterintuitive, and the gap between what feels right to a parent and what a newborn's brain actually needs is wider than most people realize. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at a few completely ordinary moments in your day and see them completely differently. And the changes, they're small, but the difference for your baby is enormous. When your baby is crying and nothing is working, most parents do something completely instinctive. They raise their voice, not out of frustration, out of desperation. You start talking louder, more urgently, more emphatically. Hey, it's okay. Mama's here. You're okay. It feels like you're trying to cut through the noise. Like if you just say it with enough conviction, they'll hear you. But here's what's happening in your baby's brain in that moment. A newborn's auditory cortex is not yet calibrated for nuance. In the first weeks and months of life, volume and urgency are processed as environmental threat cues. That's not a parenting opinion. That's the architecture of an immature nervous system that spent 9 months listening to muffled, rhythmic, low-frequency sounds inside the womb. The sudden introduction of sharp, high-volume, rapidly changing speech patterns triggers the same neural alarm system that would fire if something dangerous were nearby. Experienced pediatric occupational therapists have described this pattern for decades. A distressed caregiver's escalating voice often escalates the infant right along with it. You're both feeding each other's nervous systems. The fix is almost maddeningly simple, and it works because of a principle called prosodic entrainment. The baby's nervous system will literally begin to synchronize with the rhythm and cadence of a calm voice. Drop your pitch. Slow your words down, almost uncomfortably slow. Draw out the vowels. Hey, you're okay. I've got you. It feels strange to speak that slowly when you're panicking. Do it anyway. You're not trying to communicate information to your baby. You're offering your nervous system as a template for theirs to follow. If that reframe just changed how you think about soothing, leave a 1 in the comments. I want to know how many of us have been doing this one. This one is going to feel controversial because it goes against something that's been repeated so often in parenting culture. It sounds like law. Respond to your baby immediately, every time, every sound, and responsiveness is genuinely important. The research on sensitive caregiving is robust and real. Babies whose signals are consistently noticed and responded to build more secure attachment patterns over time. That part is true, but there's a distinction that gets lost, and it matters enormously. There's a difference between responsiveness and hypervigilance, and infants can feel that difference. When a parent hovers at maximum alertness over every grunt, every facial twitch, every small sound, treating each one as a potential emergency, the baby picks up on the ambient anxiety of that state. Infants are extraordinarily sensitive to parental affect. The work of developmental psychologist Ed Tronick, particularly his still face experiments, demonstrated just how attuned even very young infants are to the emotional availability and state of their caregiver. Babies don't just respond to what you do. They respond to what you feel while you're doing it. A parent in a state of constant alert vigilance communicates something to the baby's nervous system. The environment requires maximum monitoring. And a baby's nervous system, still learning whether the world is safe or dangerous, takes that cue seriously. The practical shift here is learning to pause for 3 to 5 seconds before responding to ambiguous sounds. Not ignoring your baby, pausing, giving yourself and them a moment to assess whether this is a genuine distress signal or just the ordinary noise of a body learning to exist in the world. That pause, practiced consistently, teaches your own nervous system to downregulate before you arrive at the baby. And a regulated caregiver is the most powerful calming tool in developmental science. Here's a number that stops most parents cold. A newborn's optimal wakeful engagement window, the period during which their nervous system can comfortably process stimulation, is somewhere between 45 and 90 minutes from the time they wake up. After that window closes, the nervous system starts tipping toward overload. And here's the cruel irony. The signs of overload in an infant look almost identical to the signs of boredom or understimulation. Fussiness, turning away, arching, rubbing eyes. So parents see the fussiness, conclude the baby needs more engagement, and lean in with more faces, more sounds, more toys. They're adding wood to a fire that was already too hot. Modern infant play culture has an overstimulation problem. The market for developmental toys, black and white visual cards, sensory bins, and enrichment tools is enormous, and none of those things are bad. The timing is what matters. Watch for what researchers call infant cue language. Gaze aversion, when your baby turns their face away from you, is not rejection. It is a self-regulatory behavior. The baby is managing their own sensory load. When you see it, the correct response is to pull back, dim the stimulation, and let them recalibrate. The most developmentally supportive thing you can do after an active play window isn't more play. It's stillness, quiet, a dim room, your calm presence without agenda. Some of the most anxious, hard-to-settle babies I've seen described in developmental literature are not understimulated. They're chronically overstimulated by parents who are trying incredibly hard. If this one landed for you, share this video with another new parent right now. This is the kind of thing nobody puts on the box of the toy. If what we've covered so far has made you rethink even one moment from this week, that like button is right there. And it genuinely helps this content reach other parents who need it. Because what's coming next is where it gets really interesting. We've talked about voice and vigilance and stimulation, but the next habits go deeper into sleep, touch, and something about the way we talk to babies that most parents have never considered. These are the ones that tend to hit hardest. The transfer, every parent knows the transfer. You've rocked them, fed them, walked them, patted them into the deepest sleep you've ever seen on a human face. You wait longer. You begin the descent toward the mattress with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. And the second their back touches the surface, eyes open, full alarm, start over. Most parents interpret this as a sleep problem. It's actually a neurological safety response. Infants are born with a well-documented startle response called the Moro reflex, which is triggered by the sudden sensation of falling or losing support. But beyond the Moro reflex, there's a subtler mechanism at play, proprioception, the body's sense of its own position in space. When a baby is held, their proprioceptive system is receiving constant input, pressure, warmth, movement. When they're placed on a flat surface, that input drops suddenly to near zero. For a nervous system still learning to distinguish safe from unsafe, that sudden withdrawal of sensory input can register as an alarm. This is why the drowsy but awake guidance from sleep researchers exists, not as a sleep training trick, but as a way of allowing the baby's nervous system to make the transition to the surface while still conscious, so the proprioceptive shift isn't a shock. The practical implication: slow the transfer down dramatically. Keep one hand on the baby's chest for a full 30 seconds after you've placed them down. The continued pressure input tells the nervous system support is still present. The world is still safe. You can go back to sleep. It sounds almost too simple, but the number of parents who've described this as the thing that finally worked after weeks of failed transfers is not small. Here's something most parenting books don't address directly. Infants don't just respond to individual moments of stress. They respond to patterns. And one of the most underappreciated stressors for a young infant is an environment that is wildly unpredictable in its sensory character. Think about a typical baby's day. They wake up in a dim, quiet nursery. They're carried to a bright kitchen with overhead fluorescent lighting, a television on in the background, a coffee maker hissing, a sibling talking. Then they're taken to a grocery store with harsh lighting, ambient noise, strangers' faces. Then back to the quiet nursery, then to a loud family dinner, then back to bed. Each of those transitions requires the baby's nervous system to completely recalibrate its baseline. Adults can do this relatively easily because our nervous systems have years of practice filtering and adapting. A 3-month-old's nervous system is doing this for the first time, every time, with no filter and no prior template. Developmental researchers who study sensory processing in infancy have described what they call sensory load accumulation, the idea that stress responses in infants aren't always triggered by any single event, but by the cumulative weight of multiple transitions in a short window. The fix isn't to keep your baby in a sensory bubble. That's neither practical nor developmentally appropriate. The fix is to build predictable sensory anchors into the day, a consistent pre-sleep sequence, same dim light, same quiet, same sound texture, gives the nervous system a recognizable signal. This pattern means safety is coming. The brain stops scanning for threat and starts preparing for rest. Predictability is not rigidity. It's a gift to a nervous system that is still learning what the world looks like. If you've made it this far, you're clearly not the kind of parent who's happy with surface-level answers. You want to understand the why, and that's exactly what we do here. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because this is the depth we bring every week. And the next 2 sections, we're going into something about how you talk to your baby, and then one final habit that almost every parent does, and almost none of them realize is a stressor. Those 2 are worth staying for. There's a belief, widespread and deeply held, that babies don't understand language, and therefore the content of adult conversation around them doesn't matter. That belief is wrong in a way that has real consequences. Infants don't understand words, but they are extraordinarily sophisticated processors of prosodic information. the emotional tone, rhythm, tension, and effect embedded in speech. By 3 months, research in infant speech perception has consistently shown that babies can distinguish between calm and tense vocal patterns, not from the words, but from the acoustic signature of the voice producing them. What this means practically: when you have a tense conversation with your partner, a stressful phone call, or an anxious discussion about money or logistics, in the same room as your baby's nervous system is receiving and processing the emotional content of that exchange, not the words, the feeling. This is not a reason for panic or guilt. It's a reason for awareness. You don't need to perform constant happiness around your infant. That's neither sustainable nor authentic. And babies can detect performed affect too. What you can do is notice when you're carrying significant emotional charge in your voice and make a small conscious choice about proximity and environment. Some of the most thoughtful developmental practitioners recommend what they call an emotional weather check before picking up a distressed baby. A 5-second pause to notice your own state, take a breath, and arrive with as much genuine calm as you can access in that moment. Not performed calm, accessed calm. There's a difference, and your baby will know it. Be honest with yourself right now. How often do you have tense conversations within earshot of your baby without thinking twice? Drop a comment. I genuinely think this is the most underappreciated one on this list. This is the last one, and it might be the most important. Modern parenting culture has, with entirely good intentions, created a powerful narrative around responsiveness. Respond fast. Respond always. Never let them cry. And again, the core of that is right. Consistent responsiveness builds secure attachment. That is real. But there's a specific behavior that lives inside that well-intentioned framework that may be doing the opposite of what it's designed to do, rushing in before the cry has actually started. Infants cycle through sleep stages, and during those cycles they make sounds, move, grimace, and exhibit what looks for all the world like distress, but is actually just the normal neurological activity of a sleeping or transitioning brain. When a parent rushes in and intervenes at this point, several things happen. First, the baby who is about to self-settle is now fully awake. The intervention that was meant to prevent distress has created it. Second, and this is the part that's harder to talk about, the baby begins to learn at a neurological level that the internal state of transitioning between sleep cycles is something that requires external rescue. The nervous system doesn't get the chance to practice its own regulation. Over weeks and months, this can contribute to what developmental researchers describe as a reduced capacity for self-soothing, not because the baby is spoiled, but because the window for practicing that skill keeps getting closed before it opens. The research on infant sleep self-regulation consistently points to the value of a brief observation window, somewhere between 1 and 3 minutes, before intervening on nighttime sounds. Not leaving a baby to cry indefinitely, not ignoring genuine distress, just pausing long enough to determine whether the sound is escalating toward real distress or resolving on its own. In that small window, you give the nervous system a chance to do something remarkable, regulate itself, and every time it does, it gets a little better at it. That's not a parenting philosophy. That's neuroscience. I dare you to try the observation pause for just 1 week and come back to tell me what you noticed. Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. You were never the problem. You just needed the map. Now you have it. And the way you show up for your baby tomorrow is already different. Thanks for watching. The end screen has more videos in the same world. Pick one. You're already the parent your baby needs. Keep going.